Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. And I do declare the 2023 Vernon Town meeting to be in order. We've missed you. Welcome back. Just to go over a couple of basics. Firstly, let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing. A moment of silence for those in our community who've lost their lives over the past 12 months and those who have been hurt by the scourge that they call COVID-19. Please be seated. Just to go over the rules of the meeting, anyone looking to get the attention of the moderator of the meeting should raise your voter card, and if you're recognized, please come to the microphone at the center of the room, and we will have you speak from there. If you have an issue of mobility, let us know, and the Dio brothers will make sure that you get a microphone. Now, each one article will be moved and seconded and then restated before discussion will take place. You can ask for a cessation of debate, which would require a two-thirds majority. All votes are by voice, by division. In case someone wants to call for a division, they can do that. A request for a paper ballot would take 7 members of the body. If there's anything that you do not understand, please ask. It's my role to help you do what you'd like to do with this meeting. Now, this is, of course, part 1 of the meeting. Articles 1 through 3 will be discussed, actually will be voted tomorrow. Article 3 is the school budget, which will be voted tomorrow, and we wanted to give the school board a chance to explain the article. So introducing the board would be the school board chair, Kerry Amidon.
Can you hear me? Sounds good. Okay, so I've got Chad Mulverhill. Oh, no.
Needs to be a little louder.
So Chad Mulverhill, better? Okay, Chad Mulverhill, Hannah Rosinski, Kerry Sparks, and Walter Brough. We also have with us tonight our principal, Mary Ross, and we have our superintendent, Mark Spino. We have our director of special education, Tate Erickson, and we have our business administrator, Frank Rucker. So we are here to give you a brief presentation, and then if you've got any questions. So, how to do this? All right. Mary, you're on. Okay. So the question we are voting on tomorrow is, shall the Vernon voters adopt a budget of $7,650,043 to defray its expenses and liabilities for the 2023-2024 school year? But what the question you're all really asking is, what does this mean for my taxes? Here we go. So next, what it means is a 2.8% increase over last year. So if your house site is valued at $100,000, you're going to see a $40 increase over what you paid last year. So on a $200,000 house, you're going to see an $80 increase. Now for the fine print. What we always have to remind people is that this is based on the current property yield rate that was set by the tax commissioner at the beginning of January. So as we move through the legislative process, if there are any changes, we will keep you informed. The other important thing to note is that only 30% of people in the state of Vermont actually pay the full amount of taxes based on your house site value. 70% of people will see a credit that you get every year before your taxes are due, after you file your homestead, and that will give you a credit on your taxes. So this increase is the maximum that only 30% of people will be paying. So next, what accounts for the increase? The first is special education costs have gone up. So we've seen a 28% increase. This is COVID related. We are seeing an increased number of special education referrals. Our out-of-district placements are also getting expensive. So those are two areas where we are seeing that increase. We are also seeing an increase in secondary education costs. So these are the costs that we pay for our 7th through 12th graders to go to middle and high schools because we are only a K through 6 facility here. So the average increase in those tuition rates was about 4.4%. But given the number, all of our students are going 7 through 12 elsewhere, and those rates have gone up. So that's a $97,000 increase. And then the final area where we are seeing the largest increase is we are looking to replenish our capital reserves because we've got 2 large projects coming up. The first of which is a heating system upgrade with a phased replacement of our 2 35-year-old boilers. We are also entering what we hope, for us at least, is the final phase of our roof replacement. So this is part of our overall investing in our facility. So even with this 2.8% increase in taxes, your taxes for next year are going to be lower than they were 2 years ago. So that, I think, is a great trend we're incredibly proud of. So if you paid in FY22 on a $100,000 house, you paid $1,475. This year, you're going to be paying $1,448. So we've managed to keep taxes as stable as possible. So a couple things to keep you informed of. There is a new learning collaborative that the WSESU, so that is our supervisory union, we are one of the 2 district members in that union, is working on a learning collaborative, and we're hoping that we can get some cost savings out of that. So this is all of the supervisory unions in Windham County are getting together to try and collaborate to figure out better ways to provide services. And if they can provide a service for us at a lower cost, we're going to take advantage of that. So this is just one more thing that we are trying to do to keep costs down. We also are working towards a more carbon neutral solution for our heating system. So that's something that we are currently working on. And then we're hoping to kick off the next school year with a district-wide school boards retreat. So we are one board. There is the school district, which is the merged board from Brattleboro, Putney, Dummerston, and Guilford. And we're going to try to get together and do a school board retreat to really plan goals and priorities on a district-wide level. So those are 3 things to know that are coming soon. Bottom line, this budget supports over 300 students, kindergarten through 12th grade. The elementary school has 162 of these students, educated and supported in Vernon by Principal Mary Ross and her strong and talented staff, who we thank as often as we possibly can. So thank you to any staff here. At the secondary level, we have 141 students attending a variety of approved middle and secondary schools, both public and private, in Vermont and in Massachusetts. Vernon remains one of the few schools that has retained the right for school choice and still has local school board oversight. Final thoughts before we get to questions. This is the last year of the ESSER funds, so that's the COVID relief money. We have worked very hard as a board to be careful in the use of that money so it does not impact our tax rate. And this budget, we believe, prepares our capital fund for future years so that we can protect the investment we have all made in this facility. And finally, schools do remain different post-pandemic. But we believe that this budget matches the priorities that we have set to best serve our students. Questions?
So questions for the school board on the school board budget, Article 3. Again, please hold your voter card up if you wish to ask a question. And all I see are crickets. Oh, here we go. Mr. Pond, please come to the microphone. And again, state your name. Yeah, you.
George Pond. I might be a little off key here because I don't have kids to go to school because my kids are 47, so they've been gone for a while. Now, as I might have understood this, and I could be wrong, our school was voted out of the Windham Southeastern Supervisory Union, true? Back in the days.
We chose not to remain with BUHS number 6. So I know it sounds like I'm splitting hairs, but
Right.
There is still a supervisory union because you have to have that. That is where the state sends your special education money, your transportation, your food services. Certain services are done at the supervisory union level. We are our own board.
Okay, gotcha.
And then there is a second board
Right,
that's
because
called
we
the
didn't
SD.
join-
Because we didn't want to be
Gotcha
merged.
there. Okay, now I understand that part. Now, in doing that, in having our own board, how much does the state put into our special education fund, or are we, as the Vernon town people, responsible for 100% of it?
So, and I am so glad I got my phone of friends here tonight. The way it works is all special education funds go into a supervisory union, and then they are allocated based on student enrollment. So we, I believe, have 7% of the students, and so we take 7% of the costs.
And the state finances the rest?
All of the money comes in effect from the state.
So special education isn't a separate budget from normal education?
There are separate line items. So the way it works, and this is, I don't want to go too into the weeds, but when you write your tax check for your property taxes for the school, it actually doesn't go to Vernon. Everybody in the state sends all of your tax dollars up to Montpelier. Montpelier puts it into what's called the Education General Fund, along with some lottery funds, along with, oh boy, some
Gotcha,
part of the
understand.
sales tax. It all goes up there, and then the state says, okay, we're going to send this much back to Vernon to pay for. So our taxes all go up there and then get apportioned back.
So, using the number of, I believe you said 28%? Would that not increase from the state to make it lesser from the townspeople here? Because you don't really know what we're going to get for dollars from the state in this next fiscal year budget, do you?
We do not know that yet. And we don't know that until everybody passes their budget, and then they up in Montpelier go, okay, here's how much was passed and here's how much we can send down.
And I don't want to sound like I'm antagonizing you.
No, don't worry.
If this hasn't been done yet, and the money's not there, how did you come up with 28%?
Because
Is that
we
a
have,
fictitious number that we're just using?
nope, we have looked at the needs of the students, calculated what it will cost to provide those services based on providing a fair and appropriate education for our kids. We have built this budget, and now if the budget is approved, it goes up to the state, and then the state will say, okay, all 291 towns in Vermont will have their budgets, they will apportion them, and then the state will send us the money
Yeah,
that we
'cause
need.
that's quite a jump, 28%.
It is
Because,
quite a
you know,
jump.
I mean, we're not the little town with the golden spoon
Yeah.
anymore. We used to be. We used to be able to have anything we want, and we need to take a hard look at.
Yeah.
We're not that people anymore.
Right.
My other question will be, and then I'll sit down, but you mentioned three things: the roof, the furnace, and there was one other thing.
It's roof and then the two boilers
Right,
that need
okay.
to be replaced.
So I guess what I would like to know is, in the town budget, each section, like the fire department, the town, and stuff like that, they have line items that they project the dollar value of what year, like, we could use this as far as, okay, maybe in 2030, we're gonna need to replace these furnaces again. So maybe projected amount of, say, $80,000, well, between now and then, this is what we'll need to raise and put into that budget, so when it comes time, like now, we don't have to do this.
We have a 5-year capital plan.
Okay,
What can I tell you about it, or what can I have Chad tell you about it?
no, you don't really need to tell me about it. I'm just curious why you need to have this extra money if the capital plan was planned correctly.
Nope, and it is. So ultimately, what we have is we have capital reserve funds and our capital funds in the budget. And over the years, we've said, okay, in 3 years, we're looking at the replacement of these boilers.
Right.
Excuse me, in 4 years, we're looking at another section of roof to be replaced. So we've actually, what we're doing this year is adding some funds back to that budget because we've accrued for some of those costs.
But is that not something that could be done gradually over a few years period of time instead of a big bite?
And it has. We didn't do any last year because when we looked at our budget, we said, you know what, we're already asking our taxpayers to pay a lot of money here.
You know,
and it's an
because-
opportunity to not accrue that money this year. And so now we're just trying to make sure that we have enough money in the funds
Right.
to pay for these expenses that we have actually projected
Sure.
out 5 years.
I mean, because our school really does get whatever they need to have to make sure that the children are as educated as possible, which I can agree with. But once again, we're not the town with the golden spoon. And until we realize that, our taxes will go up every year until eventually you'll drive the seniors out of here because there are seniors in our town that cannot afford what they're doing already. Food for thought.
Thank you.
Any further questions on Article 3, the school budget? Seeing none, I'll remind you that the, go ahead, Mrs. Amidon.
May I speak
Mrs.
first?
Brzezinski.
I'm just can anyone hear me? I'm just wondering if maybe T can speak to a little bit of the changes with regards to special education and some of the non-negotiable nature of making sure that kids that have IEPs, 504s, and have requirements that are set forth by the state are educated, and it's not really a negotiable thing. So although we would like to think that we could lower that money that we have to pay for those students, it's actually an area where locally we can't do that. We are we're obligated by law to provide special education to the children that need it. And as Kerry spoke to, those needs have gone up since COVID and in recent years all over the state. So unfortunately, it's one of the inevitable parts that came as a result of the pandemic and where we're at socially. And so I just want to make sure we give due diligence to that, to acknowledge that unfortunately, as much as special education is expensive, it's one of the things that we don't have control over. We have to provide them with the funds and the education they need to be successful moving forward. So perhaps you can talk to that briefly? Okay.
The special education director has been asked to speak. He's not a voter, but without any objection, we'll allow him to say a few words. Please state your name.
Hi, Tate Erickson, Director of Special Education for Windham Southeast Supervisory Union. It's my honor to come and speak to you all and to let you know that was exactly right, that we are mandated by the federal government to provide a free and appropriate public education for all students, and to do that within the least restrictive environment. That means to be with your typical peers in the mainstream classroom as much as possible during the school day. That being said, students who have specialized needs often need something unique. We create IEPs, individual education plans, which outline goals and objectives and student strengths and needs, and work with special services that not all students can get in order to help them access the mainstream curriculum and progress towards their potential. So that is our mandate. I came in this July excited about the resources, the dedicated staff, and I'm still riding that cloud, to be honest. There are so many talented educators serving your children, so I can't say that enough. We still have to, at times, do something substantially different for certain students to provide them a meaningful education. That has led to a number of outplacements, increased transportation costs, students that have unique behavioral or educational needs, and we just need to meet them where they're at and then have ambitious goals to help them get back into the classroom as much as possible.
Any further discussion on Article 3, the school budget? Do you have anything further to say, Mrs. Amidon?
We've got two more slides.
Two more slides.
Two more slides.
Go ahead.
All right. So next up is, maybe three more slides. So again, you're voting tomorrow. Oh, sorry. Thank you.
So voting is tomorrow. If you have any questions, ask him. Next slide, little public service announcement. This might be hard to see. The school board, under its purview, has a nursing scholarship. So we wanted to use this opportunity to get it out in front of as many people as possible. We will be making sure that the application and the information is posted on the town website. You can call the school to get additional information. I'm going to make sure Tim's got the information, or you can call Tim, he'll get you to me, talk to any one of us. But it is the Richard Steenbruggen Scholarship Award. It is awarded yearly to a Vernon resident who is going on to an accredited institution for further studies in either nursing or health services. So the deadline for the application is May 1st. We just thought this would be a good way to get it out to more people. So if anyone has any questions, let us know. And then next up, we have a thank you. And this thank you is to Chad. So I'm going to turn it over to Hannah.
It's a roast.
Okay. I know, as much as I'd like this to be a roast, I'll be professional here and save that for a bachelor party or something of that nature. I'm just kidding. We would like to take a moment to thank Chad Mulverhill, who has held the school board seat since 2018. During his tenure, Chad has represented Vernon well, giving substantial thought to how decisions impact each taxpayer, our children, the staff, and the community at large. As a parent, a coach, a VY employee, and now a North Star employee, a veteran, and a good human, the perspectives he has shared and the time he has served on our facility and safety committee has been invaluable. We will very much miss his humor and depth of knowledge. Please join me in thanking him for our service to this town.
At this time, we'll take a very brief recess to allow the school board to clear the decks and to allow the select board to come forward. When we reconvene, we'll also have a brief comment from State Representative Sarah Coffey, who has decided to join us. So we're in recess. Please take your seats. The meeting will be reconvened. We'll introduce the select board in just a minute, and we're doing the best we can. We've had some issues with the sound system, and it's rare that people cannot hear me, so thank you for your patience. We'd like to, before we go to the select board portion of the town meeting warning, introduce a state representative who represents Vernon and Guilford. Always glad to have her here. Let's please give a warm welcome to Sarah Coffey.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? I will have to speak loudly, I think. How's that sound? Good. Well, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. You know, town meeting is one of my favorite annual traditions, and it's really so great that we're able to be back here all together in person to engage in civic dialogue as we review budgets and respectfully debate issues with our neighbors. And I know you have a full agenda tonight, and I promised him that I would just keep my remarks brief. But I wanted to share a brief update from the legislature. On January 4th, we returned to Montpelier for the start of a new 2-year biennium. And now, after 8 weeks, we are nearly halfway through the 2023 session. Time flies so quickly up in the State House. And in the House, we're working at a fast pace to bring many of our priority bills across the finish line before the March crossover deadline. We're seeing substantial revenue growth this year in the purchase and use and meals and rooms tax, largely due to the impact of federal pandemic stimulus and recovery dollars. Our challenge really is to make strategic use of these one-time federal funds to meet our state priorities. And those priorities include leveraging federal funds with state funds to support improvements in roads, bridges, and other infrastructure. Other targeted statewide priorities are those that will deliver long-term dividends for Vermonters, including investments in housing, broadband expansion, workforce training, clean energy, and childcare. And several bills, including our budget bills, will be coming to the floor in the next 2 and 3 weeks, which will really embody those priorities. I'm really honored that this year the Speaker of the House appointed me as the chair of the House Transportation Committee. This committee is both a policy and a money committee, which has the jurisdiction over all modes of transportation in Vermont, including aviation, highways, bridges, public transportation, railroads, and rail trails. And with the railroad going through Vernon and how that is one thing that I was really excited about, but also how our state will help fund our towns with maintaining our roads and bridges. And with the influx of these, what we call IIJA, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act funding, our transportation budget this year is $850 million. And these funds will support critical infrastructure such as our roads, paving, bridges, rail infrastructure, and will help us to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and support bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, public transportation, incentives that help Vermonters transition to more fuel-efficient cars and vehicles, and funding that helps build out our electric vehicle infrastructure. I'm really very honored to serve as your state representative. I think this is such an amazing town. It's been really fantastic to get to know so many of you, and I'm so inspired by a lot of the work that this town has been doing. And I was just talking to Dave Emery saying that I really do feel like a big part of my job is to listen, to carry your voices up to Montpelier, and also to bring home the bacon. So I'm looking forward with much of this transportation funding. There are a lot of opportunities that I think that Vernon and Guilford, my two towns, could really take advantage of. And I always really appreciate the way that this town is really smart about its budgeting with their capital budgets and money that you put aside to leverage some of these opportunities. So I look forward to sitting down with the select board and the town administrator to figure out how we can bring some of that back to Vernon. So I have tonight, I left this at the front table here. I have a legislative report that goes into some of our updates. I also host my monthly Coffee with Coffee meetings, and this on the second Saturday and Sunday of every month. This Saturday at 10 to 11 a.m., I'll be at the Vernon Free Library, and they're great opportunities to connect with neighbors. I share updates, but I really also want to hear what's on your mind. And I just want folks to know I do have an email list, email newsletter that I send out, but I also post regularly in Front Porch Forum and on my legislative Facebook page. And I think that's it. I'll be here for the full meeting and look forward to hearing more about the issues that that you're talking about here tonight. And always a big part of this work is constituent services. So if you ever need help navigating the Department of Motor Vehicles or another agency within state government, please reach out to me. It's really some of the most rewarding work that I get to do. So please reach out. I am here to help. So thank you so much for your time this evening, and thank you all for volunteering and making Vernon such a great community to live and work in. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Coffey, and let's be clear, we in Vernon like bacon, especially if you're bringing it home. We now move, before we go to Article number 4, I'd like to introduce Sandra Harris, the Chair of the Vernon Selectboard, who will introduce the board and staff.
Is this on?
Yep.
Okay, Shelley Bamford is your town administrator. She is a great asset to this town. And then there's Jean Carr, Tom Camino, Michael Root, and this guy is retiring, he thinks. Jeff Dunkley is from a family that has given to this town for more years than any of us have been alive. And Jeff, you've lived up to your family's ethics and dedication. I would like to give you this plaque and tell you you will be missed, but we trust that you will continue with the town.
Call that moderator's prerogative. We now would also like to go to Article number 4. Article 4 is, shall the voters authorize town general fund expenditure for operating expenses of $2,214,819, of which $1,775,430 shall be raised by taxes, and $296,950 by estimated income, and $100,000 applied from general fund balance to offset the FY 23-24 budget. Is there a motion on the floor? Mr. Carino.
Mr. Moderator, I move...
Please use the microphone if you would, please.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters authorize the total general fund expenditure for operating expenses of $2,214,819, of which $1,775,430 shall be raised by taxes, $296,950 by estimated income, with $100,000 applied from the general fund balance to offset the proposed FY 22-23 budget.
It should be 23-24. Do we hear a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that the voters authorize the total general fund expenditure for operating expenses of $2,214,819, of which $1,775,430 shall be raised by taxes, $296,950 by estimated income, with $100,000 applied from the general fund balance to offset the proposed FY 23-24 budget. Mr. Garrido, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Only if there are questions, Mr. Moderator.
Questions on Article number 4? Questions on the town budget? I believe you had a voter card in your hand. Yes, please come forward and state your name.
I'm Munson Hicks. I'm just asking for clarification because what we were given is different, that $100,000. How does that figure into the other numbers? Because those other numbers didn't change. Originally it was no carryover, and now you said $100,000. And just wondering how that affects the other numbers.
The administration or Mrs. Turnley is queried. Mrs. Turnley, Town Treasurer, you're recognized.
Is this working? Cindy Turnley, Town Treasurer. The $100,000 after the audit was completed, they said that there was $100,000 that we could feel free to use to offset the taxes. And also there is another amount which wasn't mentioned, which is the part of the ARPA money we're going to be using. What's that? That figures $42,439. So there's 3 different amounts of money that are lowering the amount needed to be raised. But that was money that the auditors, the $100,000 was money the auditors said we could use to offset the taxes for next fiscal year.
Thank you. Further discussion, questions on Article number 4? Front row.
My name is Eleanor Thomas. So I had a couple of questions. I think just to follow up to Munson, it would be helpful to get clarification on those numbers if, as Cindy said, the $100,000 was supposed to affect those other numbers so that we're clear what they are. But my question tonight is kind of a general question of, I noticed a very significant increase in salaries in the budget, and if somebody could speak to that, because they ranged from 5% to 23%. And I think there's many people sitting in this audience who are not getting a 23% increase in salary this year, so an explanation would be really nice.
The administration and the board is queried. Mr. Garrido?
Thank you for that question. During the course of the budget year last year, there was seemingly discussion on how we were going to compensate the employees of the town. Over the years, there had been actions taken that would take away some things from the employees. If budgets were tight, there were good, honest decisions made at the time. So the board voted to appropriate some money to go out and do what's called a wage and classification study to look at all of the different towns in the area as to what similar employees with similar job titles in similar tenure. Okay, so if somebody's been here a year, they're not going to make the same amount in the same job as somebody who's been here for 10 years. They went out and did a survey of that. They brought it back to the Selectboard. There were some changes that needed to be made to bring people in line with the industry standard, if you will, for not just our area, but for these job titles that are similar throughout the state of Vermont. There were augmentations that had to be made. There may have been someone who's been here for 30 years. These are examples that was making the minimum of what was the average of all of the. Look, so if somebody's been here for 30 years, they may have been making year 1 salary based on the study that was done. So adjustments were made. What we hope to have done with this is getting people where they quote unquote belong. And yes, some people got a little more bump than others. But moving forward, there is a pay plan in place that will stepwise move employees, if they stay and they do a good job and their supervisor says they deserve it, and the select board and town meeting say they deserve it, people will know what they can expect from year to year, as opposed to each year as it's been kind of ad hoc. And it was, well, we think we can do this year, we think we can do that. This kind of gives the town and the employees who come to work for us a picture of what they can expect to get from the town and what we expect from them. So yes, there are some things that look a little wonky, but in the scope of the industry that we work in, or these folks work in, what we're trying to do is get them on par with their counterparts throughout the other communities in the area.
Further discussion?
Can I get a follow-up question?
One follow-up, and then we're going to move on.
So can you tell us, who did the market study, and was it based on, you said the area, is that the area in the state of Vermont, or was it including some Massachusetts communities where Mass has a much higher cost of living and they get paid significantly more money? I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I admire you for wanting to bring people into market. However, maybe the select board should consider splitting it up and not hitting the taxpayers all in 1 year with such a big increase for some of the employees. Because 23% is pretty significant when you are a very well-paid employee anyway.
Mr. Guarino, did you wish to further respond?
Yes.
Or,
To answer the first part of your question, the market data was done by the name of the firm, what was it? Flynn Gallagher out of Burlington, or Montpelier area. So it was done by a professional group that does this. The market, the survey market included many towns, but certainly our employment in catchment area, which is Vernon, Guilford, Brattleboro, Newfane, Northfield, which actually the pay scales were pretty close between Northfield and here, Berniston, kind of if you did a circle around. So there was some of that. And to answer the second part of your question, this is being offset this year by some ARPA monies. We didn't want to hit the townspeople all at once with 100% of the cost, so we're offsetting. Some of this offset that you see is splitting it up over a couple of years before the full burden comes onto the tax rate fully. So we did offset it in an effort to keep the impact as minimal as we can over a couple of year period of time.
please come forward, state your name.
Josh Unruh. So when you looked at this study, I'm assuming you looked at it based on 40 hours a week. Is that correct?
It was based on, was it 40 or whatever the hours were with the towns? Yeah. Right. So it was both. It was those that worked 40, we based it on 40. Those that worked 35, we based it on 35. Those that work 37 and a half, those are part-time.
But we don't have any employees within the town office that work less than 40 hours a week, correct?
Other than we have part-time.
Other than your part-timers, so
Well,
your town clerk, your town treasurer, all that kind of thing, they're all 40 hours a week. So a study was done by the select board approximately 5 years ago that noted how many more hours the town of Vernon has comparatively to other towns within the region. So we're not taking that into consideration that our employees are already compensated for 40 hours a week when the majority of surrounding towns don't have 40-hour-a-week town clerks. They don't have 40-hour-a-week town treasurers. So this doesn't seem right. Seems like we're padding the pockets of a few people at the expense of everybody.
No one's getting padded And to answer your question, we took the current workload or the current work hours. We didn't change that. We based things off the current conditions within the town of Vernon. We didn't say we're going to drop people to half-time or we're going to do this. We took the current conditions, looked at the study through the current conditions, because we had no intentions. You have your treasurer and your town clerk are elected, and we had no intentions of making the hours of other employees less. We took a snapshot in time of what we have, see what we got, and the plan that was done 5 years ago, had it been adhered to, we may have been okay, but it was let slide, and it needed to be revamped. It needed to be updated and revamped.
One follow-up.
Okay. There was no plan that was done 5 years ago, but that's okay.
Well, there was
the hours that were suggested at the time were less than 40 hours a week. We still haven't made that reduction to come in line to other surrounding towns. We still continue to pay a full-time town clerk, a full-time town treasurer, and nobody else does that. And there's no reason for it. We spent 2 years without having anybody, well, you guys were in the office, but without having any traffic in it. There's still very little traffic. There's probably less than there was before because the state and everybody else has found more efficient ways than walking into the town office to hand the town clerk or the town treasurer a piece of paper. So there's absolutely no reason that that town office needs to be open 40 hours a week, and there's no reason to be paying those people 40 hours a week.
That is a subject to be brought up at another town meeting if the voters so choose. We took a snapshot in time of what our current operations were.
You should think about it. We shouldn't have to say it.
Further discussion on Article number 4. Mr. Langeveld, please step forward.
This may be kind of a point of order, but we have a motion on the floor for certain numbers that you read, that have been read twice, that exclude this $42,000. So if we vote the motion as it is right now, you will not have the $42,000. I think that needs to be corrected.
Could we get some corrected numbers, Mrs. Turnley?
Cindy Turnley, Town Treasurer. The amount to be appropriated is $2,214,819, with a deduction of estimated income of $296,950, a deduction of a carryover from fiscal year 21-22 of $100,000, and money from the ARPA grant for $42,439. So the amount to be raised by taxes would be $1,775,430. Thank you.
Okay. So further discussion, thank you, on Article number 4. Seeing none, we'll recognize you for a second time if nobody else wants to speak.
So those numbers don't make sense to me. The warning that we got for this meeting had the $2,214,000, the $1,775,000 with no carryover. Now we're being told we have a carryover plus a $42,000 amount. That should decrease the amount that we need to raise for taxes.
Mrs. Turnley.
If you subtract that out, the figure to be raised and the figure to be appropriated is correct. It was the amount of the offset that was incorrect in the warning that went out.
Further discussion on Article number 4. And seeing none, the motion, as has been clarified, that the voters authorize total general fund expenditure for operating expenses of $2,214,819, of which $1,775,436 will be raised by taxes, $296,950 by estimated income, $100,000 applied from the general fund balance to offset the proposed budget, and ARPA money of $42,439 also to offset the proposed 23-24 budget. Are we ready for the question? If so, all those in favor of Article 4 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 4. Article number 5, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $106,845 to be raised by taxes for administration of the Vernon Free Library. Do we have a motion? Please come forward and state your motion. And your name?
Cassie Salesman.
Please speak up.
Sorry, Cassie Salesman. So I move that the voters appropriate the sum of $106,845 to be raised by the taxes for the administration of the Vernon Free Library.
And please state your name again. We could not hear
Cassie
you.
Salesman.
Cassie Salesman. Thank you, Cassie.
Second.
And the motion is that voters appropriate total library fund expenditure of $106,845 to be raised by taxes for administration of the Vernon Free Library. Do you wish to speak to your motion?
I do, yes.
Please do.
So our wonderful staff and volunteers have been working hard to assist the current patrons to access our wonderful resources available to them. We have continue to have a lot of digital services, continuing the in-group, different in-group, in-person groups, and then also continuing to do the summer reading program. And then we hope just to see more patrons over the following year.
Thank you. Further, do you have anything on further?
I was just going to say, I'm doing the next one for the
Okay, go ahead.
floors.
All right, so any questions, comments on Article 5, the Vernon Free Library budget? And seeing none, the motion is that voters appropriate total library fund expenditure of $106,845 to be raised by taxes for administration of the Vernon Free Library. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article number 5. Article 6, to elect a library trustee to fill the expired term of 3 years through town meeting of March of 2026. Is there a motion?
No, we actually have no one for this position.
What's that?
We don't have anyone for this position, so what do I say in this?
So, say you
Do I
don't
go
have
to the floor? Sorry,
anybody
it's
for the
first time doing
position.
this.
Does anybody want to volunteer?
Does anyone want to volunteer for the board?
Do we have anybody who wishes to volunteer as a Vernon Free Library trustee? Seeing none, my thought, and Mr. Slason, if we could get your attention here, my thought would be to object to further consideration of this article if we do not have a person to elect.
Either that or entertain a motion from the floor, Mr. Moderator, but if there's no motion and no volunteer, then I think you're absolutely correct.
So if we have nobody looking to take the position, we will declare that there's no action on this item, or
Pass it over.
we're going to pass over this item without objection from the body. So that's Article 6. Article 7, to elect a library trustee to fill the unexpired term of 3 years through town meeting of March of 2024. Do we have a motion? Please come forward.
Hello, my name is Julie Nevins, and I would like to nominate Doug Rosine to fill the expired term of 3 years through town meeting of March 2024.
And what was that name again, Julie?
Doug Rosine.
Doug who?
Rosine. I'm
Okay.
happy to spell that later if you need it.
So it's been moved and seconded that Doug Rosian fill the expired term of 3 years through town meeting of March of 2024.
Yes.
Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Article 7 has been passed. Article 8, to see if the voters will appropriate the sum of, is that? Yes, the sum of $1,100 to be raised by taxes to fund Vernon Historians, Inc. for the expenditures related to Vernon's historic preservation, educational promotion, and required insurance. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
Mrs. Carr.
I move that the voters appropriate the sum of $1,100 to be raised by taxes to fund the Vernon Historians, Inc. for the purpose of records preservation, retention, and promotion of history, educational incentives, and insurance coverage.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate a sum of $1,100 to be raised by taxes to fund the Vernon Historians, Inc. for the purpose of record preservation, retention, and promotion of history, education initiatives, and insurance coverage. Is there discussion on Article number 8? Mr. Parker.
Mark Parker. Who is on the Historical Society in charge, the board? Is that enough money for what you need? Because, and I say this out of the goodness of my heart, my wife is very big into scrapbooking. And when my father passed away 20-something years ago, we ended up with a lot of his stuff. And just recently, we made a donation down to Bernernston, because that's where my dad was from, and he kept a lot of articles and a lot of different things. The town clerks that were working that day were just tickled pink to get so much information about Bernernston that they didn't have. And as a Vernon resident, I would like to make sure that the history of this town is preserved, not just with $1,100 this year and maybe another $1,100 next year or whatever, but is that enough money to keep the history of Vernon going so that generations from now, the kids that go through these schools will be able to look back and see where Vernon came from and where it's headed for?
Ms. Frost is interrogated if she wishes to come to the microphone and give us an answer.
Hello, my name is Heather Frost, and that is enough money that I believe, as our organization, requesting from the town of Vernon. We are a separate nonprofit organization from the town. But we will gladly accept donations from other donations from individuals, and if you'd like to volunteer your time. Thank you.
You're welcome. Further discussion on Article number 8. Seeing none, the motion is that the voters appropriate the sum of $1,100 to be raised by taxes to fund the Vernon Historians, Inc. for the purpose of records preservation, retention, and promotion of history, educational initiatives, and insurance coverage. All those in favor of Article 8, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 8. Article number 9, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Professional Services Fund? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Guarino.
I move to amend Article 13. This doesn't.
Point of order, Mr. Carino, or should we have Mr. Slayson weigh in on this to see
No,
whether...
it's just the way it's read. I move the voters appropriate the sum of $100,000 for the listers to the Professional Services Fund to be raised by taxes.
Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate the sum of $100,000 for the listers to be raised by taxes and fund the Professional Services Fund.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion on Article 9.
Yes.
It's been seconded. Discussion on the article. In back row, Mr. Hicks, come on up. I've been having that problem all day myself.
All my life. Munson Hicks, just again, if we could get a clarification, because what you moved forward is not what we've been handed, and I don't know quite where the listers come into this discussion. If we could make it clear why the $100,000 should go to the listers for Professional Services Fund. And also, it would be nice to know further on, we spend a lot of money on lawyers, over $100,000 a year, $146,000 last year. It would be nice to know, in general, for our edification, where this is going and why.
Mr. Baldwin from the listers is queried.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Last year it was 50,000. Originally, it was written at 25. You guys raised it up to 50,000 last year. We were in 3 litigations last year. We're down to 1. And it's looking like it's going to be all year, possibly. They're not looking at a court date until sometime 2024, unfortunately. That is the reason for the 100,000. And it's also for the cost for the assessments for the utilities, which also cost money to assess these utilities, which goes into the millions of dollars that this town receives in taxes from those organizations. So that is the reason why it is at 100,000. We have talked to the select board about this, and the money that we receive from the utilities is substantially more than the 100,000 that you guys put in to help basically have these utilities pay their taxes.
Further discussion on Article number 9. Mr. Brzezinski, come on down.
Don Brzezinski. You confused us with the listers thing when you threw that in the works. And I was confused with that too. But what I would like to hear is all these litigations ongoing with who and for what? That's my question. Who are these litigations are we dealing with and for what?
Am I allowed to talk about that? Okay. The one litigation that we're still currently in is with North Star. They are, I'm sorry, not North Star, correction, the dam. They are, I want to say we're in discussion about, we say their taxes are 29 billion, if I'm not mistaken. No, correction, million. They say the dam is only worth about 14 million. So that is a huge chunk of money that if we do not go to litigation, the dam would only pay $14 million in taxes versus the 29 million that we assess them at. So that is why we're in litigation. It's most utilities take us to court because they don't want to pay what we assess them at. We have a third party that does the assessment for us because we don't have the knowledge to assess utilities. And that is a large sum of money that you guys would not have to pay if they pay the full $29 million. So,
Further discussion on the article, Mr. Pond?
George Pond. I understand what you're talking about with the litigations, and my thought, and it may not be in the right direction, okay, but for my own purpose to know, when the litigations first came up and there were attorneys or lawyers hired to take the case.
correct.
Was the money not already earmarked at the time that it happened? And if it was, why are we giving you money now for something that's already been there that's supposedly paid for? Because as I understand it, when a lawyer's paid, or he gives you a sum to pay, that's what you pay. Now, if you call him on the phone, as soon as he picks up and he says, "Hi, I'm Joe," click, the time clock starts. $150 an hour. So, is that what's going on here? Is our people from this town are calling this lawyer
They
for
should not be.
information?
They should not be, but I think the select board can answer better on that. I do not have the answer of how the attorneys are being paid. I just know what we're in litigation for, and when we have a court case that we have to appear for, that we are there. There is a lot of behind the curtains with between lawyers of the utilities and our lawyers that goes on quite frequently, just to try and get this thing solved earlier than going to court. But that doesn't always seem to be the deal, because we've been going back and forth with numbers for the previous year. Because this litigation has been continuing for over a year now.
Yes, it has.
And unfortunately, because the court systems are so backed up, it's looking like another year, unfortunately.
Right, but just because it's carrying on for another year, if you're not talking to the lawyer, it shouldn't cost us much more than it already has. It's a sitting case.
This also goes towards the assessment of these utilities. The individual, or the company that we have selected to do the assessments of our utilities, this money also goes towards that as well.
So is the argument between their lawyer and ours, or is the argument between
It's
the
between
court?
all three.
And the court is not going to set a date until next year?
Right now, we're supposed to go, it's April, and I don't know when the next one after that is. There are things happening that I'm not at liberty to say.
You don't have to.
That I don't know what this is going to turn into. But the reason for the 100,000 is to pay for those two things.
Right, so did I understand this correctly? If both sides have come to a disagreement, and we have our numbers, they have our numbers, do we not have the right to a speedy trial? So if we had the right to a speedy trial, that consists of 90 days or less, and then you don't have to carry it on for another year, correct?
I don't know the answer to that, because if that was the case, our litigations would not last this long. I'm not a lawyer. You'd have to ask the lawyers why it's taking so long. All I know is that the court system is backed up, and when they can see us, we've also been in mediation, I'm sorry, throughout the year to, as I said, the numbers have been bouncing back and forth. So I don't have an answer as to the court stuff, as to why it's taking so long, as to why it hasn't been resolved by now. I just know that the bills are stacking up.
One more question, and I'm going to sit down.
Okay.
If, in fact, the town of Vernon wins this case over those people down the road, will we secondary file suit to recover legal fees? And if we do, that money should come back to the town to be put back into the budget to carry over.
I agree with you.
Therefore, we would get our $100,000 back.
I completely agree with you. As of right now, the utilities, if the court case is not resolved, they have to pay the assessed price. So for last year, they had to pay the 29 million and some change. If it goes in their favor, they are basically over a 5 to 10 year time period, their taxes are reduced until it meets what they assess their utility as. So, but right now they are paying the 29 million until it is resolved.
Further discussion on Article number 9. I was going to see that if there's no further debate, calling the question would be a moot point. We can just kind of go on and go for a vote anyway. So we'll do what you need to do here. The motion is that the voters appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be raised by taxes for the professional service fund. All those in favor of Article 9?
He added the listers.
This should not be the listers. It should be for the professional service fund. It's all encompassing for lawyers and the third-party assessment. It's not just the listers. We just happen to be, because we do the utilities, the assessment on the utilities, it looks like it's our fund, but it's not.
Point of order?
Mr. Parker.
Because I forget names, because you said the listers and it was seconded, it has to be voted, if I'm correct, with the words listers, unless we vote to get the word listers out of it and then just go with professional fund.
Mr. Moderator, may I amend the motion, please?
If you would like to make a friendly amendment,
To reword the article, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the professional services fund?
and if the seconder also says so.
Second.
Okay, so we are back to shall the voters appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the professional service fund. All those in favor of Article 9 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have moved and passed Article 9. Article number 10. Shall the voters appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Emergency Repair Replacement Fund? Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Garino.
I will try to read this one correctly.
Thank you.
I move that the voters appropriate $10,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Emergency Repair Replacement Fund.
Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate $10,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Emergency Repair Replacement Fund. Discussion on the motion. And seeing none, go ahead, come on up and make sure you're quick on those voter cards so I can see them.
Sandy Morrison. What is the Emergency Repair Replacement Fund? Is that the Capital Fund Emergency Fund?
No.
Mr. Garino, go ahead.
I'm going to turn this over to the chair.
Madam Chair, please elucidate.
I'm looking for the page funds on. If we take money from...
Microphone, please.
That's in the select.
When we use money for emergency repairs, we need to replace it. Simple as that.
Mr.
So
Garino?
if during the course, thank you, Mr. Moderator, if during the course of the year we have an emergency situation, the boiler blows up, one of the trucks goes down, it needs to be fixed quickly to get back into business. This small, relatively small, as compared to the budget emergency fund, gives the select board some latitude for being able to get some quick repairs done on unanticipated emergency expenses.
Mrs. Turnley.
The fund that we're talking about right now is emergency items under $10,000. We have another one for the big ticket items, which is called the Emergency Capital Reserve Fund. So the fund you're talking about right now is for items that come up that we didn't anticipate, but they're items that are under $10,000.
Further discussion on Article 10.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Slason,
I think
please use the microphone.
Well, I think
because you have a lovely voice, and I've known it since high school that nobody can hear you.
I think what we could use is some clarification where that fund appears in the town report. I think that's what's confusing folks, and that's the only reason for the point of order.
We can't hear you. Please get
now. Can you hear me?
Now we can. Thank you.
The point of clarification is, I believe a number of the folks are looking for the location of the town report where this emergency repair replacement fund appears. I found the emergency capital reserve fund on page 10, but I have not located, at least in today's reading, a fund called emergency repair replacement fund. So maybe you could help me with that.
Mrs. Turnley? The question, if I think I have it, is where in the town report do we find the emergency repair replacement fund?
Unfortunately, that one got left out this year. I can tell you how much is in it, though. Right now, and this is to date, there's $9,704.13.
All right, further discussion on Article number 10. Back of the room, please come down to the microphone, sir.
Hi, Gregory Corcoran, 4 Bridgman Road. I'd just like to say on this one, there's plenty of funding in the other emergency fund. This appears to be used as just free money, and we should not pass that. Thank you.
Mrs. Turnley.
Cindy Turnley, Town Treasurer. The Emergency Capital Reserve Fund is for items $10,000 and over. You can't spend out of that one if it's under $10,000. That's why a couple of years ago, the Select Board set this separate one up, or we did at town meeting, but they recommended it so that items under $10,000 we would have some place to take it out of. That's why you can't use the Emergency Capital Reserve Fund for under $10,000 items.
Mr. Bond.
Cindy, because this got left out of the budget book this year, let's back up just about 3 steps maybe. How much was the budget when the fiscal year for this year was it that started?
Asking what was in it the year it was started?
For this year?
There was $10,000 put in this year that we're in now, and of that $10,000, there's $9,704.13 still in there as of today.
What I would say is there's $9,000, they've only used less than 1,000 of that. Vote this $10,000 now, because why do they need to have $20,000 if they only used $1,000 last year?
Further discussion on Article 10. Seeing none, the motion is that voters appropriate $10,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Emergency Repair Replacement Fund. All those in favor of Article 10 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The nays appear to have it. The nays have it. You have defeated, Article 10. Article 11. Shall the voters appropriate the sum of $125,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Town Road Upgrading Fund? Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Guarino.
Shall the voters appropriate the sum of, I move that the voters appropriate the sum of $125,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Town Road Upgrading Fund.
Second.
Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate $125,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the town road upgrading fund. Do you wish to speak to your motion? Any discussion on Article 11? Over in the corner, Mr. Cochran.
Gregory Corcoran. It's my opinion with these funds that when the balance is sufficient and we have covered more than 2 years' worth in there that we have available, we lose money on these investment funds for the past few years. We should not add to them when we have enough to cover us for the next year. We should save the money.
Further discussion on Article 11? Mr. Walker?
Just so everybody's aware, the
And state your name, please.
David Walker. The cost of paving this year has doubled, and we've only gone up 25,000. And we've got quite a few roads that still need a lot of work. If we want to keep up with them, I would encourage you to fund this.
Further discussion, Article 11. Mr. Pond?
Dave's probably saying, here he goes again. This is my pet peeve. You know, once again, we are no longer the little town with this golden spoon. I don't know of any roads that are really not in good shape in this town, other than we have the Sac Road project that I understand there's money already put aside for the Sac Road project. Now, in Mr. Walker's budget, there's a place for blacktop that says $1,500. I don't understand why we have to appropriate $125,000 for roads that already look great, and I don't understand why they can't increase their blacktop budget in the town budget and maybe rent a hot pack machine and maybe fill some of those holes on our own instead of paying somebody to come in here with the big machines and tear up the whole road when you might be able to just patch that road. I haven't really seen any roads here that have potholes that you're going to fall into that we really need to allocate $125,000. Now, as I understand and I look in the book, there's $286,000 in the fund. I don't understand. Yes, it has doubled, and I'll give you that, Dave. But I think you're asking a little bit too much for the little train that thinks it can, because we're not that train anymore. And I think you need to have a hard look at that, increase your blacktop budget in your budget, and back this one right off.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Don Brzezinski. Just speaking from past experiences, I used to live in Brattleboro. I worked for the Town of Brattleboro Highway Department until I retired a couple years back. And I've got to tell you, the only reason your roads look as good as they do is because they're being maintained. And you might not realize it, but by staying ahead of the curve, you know, a road might look perfectly fine when you drive down it. For example, I'll say tire tracks on blacktop. People say there's blacktop. There's tire tracks. You were to take a 2x6 and put it across there on edge, you would actually see where the cars and trucks drive constantly. So I say, David, go for it. This has to pass. Thank you.
Further discussion, Article 11. Mr. Walker.
David Walker again. I can mention Tyler Hill Road, Pond Road, both ends. The center was done. Scott Road, And we have Stebbins Road still to be done. Only half was done. We keep cutting everything in half, trying to make it on what we get. Thank you.
Further discussion on Article number 11. You have to come to a mic, Sandy, I'm sorry. Again, this is being recorded for Brattleboro Community TV. We need your voice.
I couldn't hear the amount he said was the balance now. It says 286,000 something from last summer, but I assume you've used some of that, so
No,
did...
no, I didn't mention the budget, I just mentioned the roads that needed work to be done. It
In the
was only-
upgrading fund,
Right.
what is the balance now in that fund?
286.
It's still 286?
Yep.
And you need another 125,000?
Further discussion, Article 11. And seeing none, the motion is that the voters appropriate $125,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the town road upgrading fund. All those in favor of Article 11 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have passed Article 11. Article 12, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $40,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the town culvert fund. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Root.
I move that the voters appropriate $40,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the town culvert fund.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate $40,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the town culvert fund. Anyone wish to speak to the motion? Mr. Cochran. I see you getting your exercise.
Gregory Corcoran. Well, I like to be quick. I know we don't want to be here all night. This one is the perfect example. So we do this every year. I know these little amounts, it seems petty that we would vote no for this. But we increased the budget in total by $300,000. We have to save money somewhere. The town culvert fund balance is $316,000 and $600 more. We don't need to add the $40,000. We should not add, just build these funds up so much. This one is the perfect example. If we vote this in, we're just rubber stamping everything, and we really should be more responsible.
Further discussion, Mr. Walker, if you so choose.
Just so everybody has an idea on this, we're not talking the regular culverts that we can do. We are talking about the big box culverts. And right now, we have one up on Tyler Hill Road that we got a temporary culvert in that the state allowed us, and we're talking $500,000 right now to replace it. So we can do it now, or we'll be forced to do it the hard way. We can do it however you want. Thank you.
Further discussion on Article 12. Mrs. Morrison.
Sandy Morrison. You know, I know years ago we had all these upgrading funds that we established because we had a lot of revenue from Vermont Yankees help with our taxes. And we set aside money in capital upgrade funds and repair funds, and then it was put into an emergency capital reserve fund. And it was supposed to generate enough income so we wouldn't have to get the taxes raised every year to pay for these repairs. Clearly, it isn't working out as planned. We have big losses in our investments, but it just feels like the town has lost a lot of money with investments. People have lost a lot of money lately. The cost of living has increased a lot lately. We're in pretty hard times for a lot of people, and it feels irresponsible to me to be putting a lot more money into these funds when we had these funds all established a long time ago to take care of this. Granted, it isn't working out as planned, but maybe we should just put things on hold a little bit for a few years and hope that things turn around and we're in a better position. But I feel like we can't just keep spending money like we have it, because a lot of people don't right now, and a lot of people are having trouble paying their taxes. Thank you.
Further discussion on Article number 12. Waving in the back of the room, I believe. Come on down. And thank you for using your voter card. I'm very, very happy that I can see them.
Hi, Jessica Freeman. I think, if memory serves me correctly, the state changed the law on culverts, and now they have to be state engineered when we used to be able to do them ourselves. Is that correct? Okay. So I hear what people are saying about the market tanking a tank. My money took a tank, your money took a tank, the town's money took a tank. We're in a rough spot. We all know that. But for me, I think that's more of a reason to invest in these funds, because we know we're going to have to spend the money. A $500,000 culvert today could be 6, 7, 8, who knows? We're all in a wild west of economics right now. So I really think, while it's difficult to put money aside now, you know, Dave does a really good job of planning for our future, and I think we should listen to his advice and save for the rainy day that we're in now and is coming in the future. Thank you.
Further discussion, Article 12. Seeing none, Mr. Pond will bring you up for a second time if nobody else wants to speak. Go ahead. Come on up.
Just a quick question. Do we have a grant writer? And are there any grants from the state that can help us with this? Or do we have somebody that even does research on this?
The select board is queried. There you go.
Yes, we have a great administrator who's constantly looking for grants, and she writes a lot of them. We don't always get them, though.
Mr. Miller.
Yeah, Art Miller. I was just curious if Steve Zaluzny or Mike Renault could speak to this.
If either one are here and wish to speak to the motion, that looks like a no. Les, you want to come down, Steve? By the way, it's good to see you. I remember your father at so many of these town meetings over the years.
Yeah, I bet you do, Tim. Yeah. Well, there's, you know, investments are down. That's a separate subject to some degree, and hopefully they'll come back. You know, depends what's been invested in and so forth. But you know, obviously, nobody can tell for sure what costs will be next year. There's inflation happening big time right now. Certainly, the cost of construction could go up even more. We're hoping it will moderate. I think it will, but I don't know for sure. I'm not a, you know, savant. But I think the question that was asked of the board is, can we look for grant money? So can we look for grant money for this project is a bigger question. I think that was probably maybe you look for an answer for. Is that a possibility that it could be, you know, money could be?
Mr. Walker.
Yes, there is grant money, and yes, it will be gone for structures grant through the state of Vermont, just like with paving on some of our roads. We go for grant money on that too.
But I guess the question is, for this, say for example, this project on Tyler Hill Road, it sounds like it's going to be a pretty good sized project, so would the grant specifically be asked for that project, or is this more of a grant money for culverts in general, I guess?
The structures grants from the state would be for this project, but I can tell you they limit it to $200,000.
Further,
I have no other information that I can think of at the moment, so thank you. Yeah.
Always good to hear from you. Further discussion on Article number 12, Mr. Brzezinski.
Don Brzezinski. It's nice that we have Sarah Coffey here, and you guys notice back and forth, yeah, there's grants available, there's this available. We had this fantastic infrastructure bill that the government passed, and my question is, where's the money? Where is the money? That's all I can say.
Further discussion, Article 12? Seeing none, the motion is that the voters appropriate $40,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Town Culvert Fund. If you're ready for the question, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and you passed Article number 12. Article 13, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $4,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the town parking lots maintenance fund. Is there a motion? Ms. Carr, please use the microphone, ma'am.
Is it on?
Yes.
I move that the voters appropriate the sum of $4,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the town parking lots maintenance fund.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded, the voters appropriate the sum of $4,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the town parking lots maintenance fund. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor of Article number 13 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and you've passed Article 13. Article 14, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $5,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Elderly Assistance Fund. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator?
Ms. Harris.
I move that the voters appropriate the sum of $5,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Elderly Assistance Fund.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded, the voters appropriate the sum of $5,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Elderly Assistance Fund. Discussion on the motion. In the back of the room, Mr. Cochran.
Gregory Corcoran. Now, I love my elders. If the fund was low, I believe we should refill it. It is not low. It's $39,000. We spent $8,400 last year. So just take a one-year break. We can do it next year. Not a big deal. We don't have to approve it every single year.
Further discussion on the article. Ms. Sherman.
Mary Lynn Sherlin. I know that there's some money in that fund, and last year our main things that we did was snow removal, and that wasn't huge last year. But in the past, we have done things as fixed people's roofs, repaired septic systems, taken down trees that might fall on their house. All of those things don't come cheap, and we never know when someone in town that's going to need our services is going to need something.
Further discussion on Article 14. Seeing none, the article is the motion that the voters appropriate the sum of $5,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Elderly Assistance Fund. All those in favor of the article as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have passed Article 14. Article 15. Shall the voters appropriate the sum of $201,021 for funding of items approved in the capital plan of which $164,897.55 is to be raised by taxes. Do we have a motion? Ms. Carr.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters appropriate $201,021 for the funding of items approved in the capital plan, of which $164,897.55 is to be raised by taxes.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate $201,021 for the funding of items approved in the capital plan, of which $164,897.55 is to be raised by taxes. Discussion on the motion.
Again, point of order.
Mr. Slason, please do.
Again, just a clarification for the voters on the floor. I believe the town report on page 14 reflects a different number to be raised by taxes. It's close, but it is different. On page 14, the number is $167,897.55. So there's a difference here in $3,000 between the motion and the town report.
Shall the board answer the apparent query or point of order?
I move that we amend it to the correct amount.
You would move to amend it to, and please elucidate, or whatever it is I'm saying, what's that amount you want?
$167,897.55.
Hold on. It is on.
It is on.
No, it's not.
Okay, try again.
So the motion made by Mrs. Harris is to change the amount to be raised by taxes to $167,897.55. Am I correct, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Do we have a second? Second. Moved and seconded on the amendment to the article. Further discussion on the proposed amendment? If there is none, all those in favor of the amendment made by Mrs. Harris to change the amount to be raised by taxes to $167,897.55. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. The motion has been amended. We now move to the amended motion. Further discussion on Article 15 as amended. Mr. Root, do you wish to speak to the amended motion? Okay. Anybody else? Bueller, okay. If that's the case, the motion as amended is, oh, there we go. Thank you. I looked over there and I did not see anything. So thank you, Mrs. Morrison. Please go ahead.
I'm a pain in the neck tonight. Sandy Morrison. When do we use our emergency reserve funds? Something over 10,000. Is there anything that is necessary this year in the capital plan?
The board is being queried at this very moment.
The way it appears, there's nothing to be purchased this year because they're still kind of being saved for. Is that?
That's what it looked like to me.
Yeah.
Other than
Thank you. Please speak up because we're hearing that people cannot hear in the back of the room.
Can't hear me? Nope. Is that not on?
It is. Just speak up.
Okay. What I said was it appears in the capital plan that there's nothing to be purchased this year. It's just still in the saving phase. So the projected purchase time of the items is still out there. Except for, the lighting around the town office.
Okay. Again, it just seems to me we should take a time out. I think about 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever it was, and we thought we were being so smart creating these funds to help us down the road with any emergencies or any upgrading or repairs that we need. And then we established the capital plan to start saving. And it was all good intentions, and we did a great job, but it seems like now we're just going ahead as if we never did all that planning, and it isn't amounting to a whole lot because we don't use, of course, we were supposed to use the investment money that we were supposed to gain from all of the funds that we had, but it just seems like we should take a little pause in our spending. Thank you.
Further discussion on Article 15 as amended. Ms. Rulwich. Now, next time use your voter card, please.
Regarding the capital plan fund, that is a list, I believe, of the equipment, the expenses that we know we're going to have. And every piece of equipment, every truck is on that list, am I right? And these are items that are going to be then expected to cost more than $10,000. And like repairs to the roof of the Historians building is on that list. There are all kinds of things on there. These are, and the idea is if you know the fire truck is expected to last another 20 years, and it's going to cost you $200,000. Actually, it'll cost you a lot more, but whatever the expected cost is going to be is put on the list, and the number of years that we expect the truck to last, the payment, the amount, the total amount we're going to need is divided up by 10 years, 20 years. That money gets used, and when the time comes and it's needed, it is there. And we're very lucky to have the money, to have had the money to begin with, in order to be able to do this and set this up. Because it's hard to set it up. It takes time to get there. There's a lot of money in it. And this is not a waste. It is excellent planning. We're a lucky town to have it.
Further discussion on Article 15 as amended. Mr. Langeveld.
I'd kind of like to follow the same vein of commentary, though, because as Sandra just said, the capital plan is very good and very thorough. You've thought about everything. It's all in there, right down to the lawn tractor. Okay? And that's the way it should be. But if that's the case, then why do we need to have $1,253,952 in an emergency capital reserve fund when we've thought of everything? It's all on the list of the non-emergency capital reserve fund. So, the explanation of this in the book on page 10 says that maybe the interest and earnings from that emergency fund can fund the regular capital reserve fund. but it doesn't do that. And it never will, because 1,253,000 is not enough to spin off, you know, the 200,000 or so that we are voting on, or the 164,000 that we're voting on here. It doesn't earn that kind of a reserve. So I don't think we can do anything about this tonight. But I really suggest that over the next year, for the following year's budget process, that we take a look at this emergency capital reserve fund and see whether it even needs to exist and what else might be done with that money, because most towns do not have such a thing. They just have a good capital fund like we have, and they fund it every year. And that's all you need to do if you thought of everything down to the lawn tractor.
Further discussion on Article 15 as amended. Over there, Mrs. Staropinski, I hate to ask you to move this far, but I do think the public needs to hear your sweet voice.
Doing a lot of walking.
And my wife says I should walk more.
Maybe we can go to get them.
I was chair of the capital plan committee for years, and I've not been able to do it and can't do it again. There was no real meeting of a capital plan this year because nobody wanted to volunteer. You had one person, and that's it. The board asked for volunteers over and over again, and nobody came forward. So if you want a good capital plan, some people need to volunteer, and us people who are over 70 can't carry the burden for the town. There's a lot of people under 70. That's number one. Number two, what Sandra said was correct. This was established and very carefully worked with all the town managers to make sure that what they were submitting was exactly what the town needed. And if you don't fund this plan, not necessarily the emergency money we're talking about, but if you don't fund the capital plan, you're going to be in worse shape in the future than you think you are. The emergency capital plan money came because there were money in other funds that were consolidated into that fund. We used some of that money when the pool failed. And I don't remember what it was, but maybe Seth remembers what it was. The money was there. He could use it. He could fix the pool. He could fix the lighting. And the next year, the money was reimbursed to the fund as the emergency fund is set up. If we keep taking money out of the emergency fund, there won't be any. And that'll be a choice that taxpayers will have to look at. And as Martin said, we have a year that we can look at that. And maybe we should look at that. But you need to look at why you establish those funds and not just eliminate them. I've lost over 10% of my investment, and now I'm a single person living on a single salary. I'd like to have my taxes reduced too, but I like living in this town. And we all have to do part of what we need to do to cut where we can cut. And we should look at that fund. Martin's right. And maybe next year we won't have it, or maybe we can reduce it and use it on something else. But this year, I think we should leave things the way they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on Article 15 as amended. Ms. Ruhlwich, we'll call on you for a second time on this one.
This is somewhat tangential, and yet it's come up several times. And talking about the investments, and the investments have not done well. Well, everybody's taken a big hit. It's been a brutal year. I believe it was the year before, though, the market was pretty good, and you had to work to lose money. And our investments did not yield very much that year. And I have thought this for a long time, but I really think it might be time to review who's handling your money, the town's money, all these little funds. There's a lot of money there. You should be doing, the year before last, you should have killed it.
What else can I say? Time for
Mr.
research.
Green.
Thank you for that comment, and just so that the town meeting is aware, the town treasurer is now working with one of the local banks to look at our investment portfolio to see how it can be managed differently and better. The treasurer and the select board understood what happened the last couple of years. The treasurer and the select board have been really proactive this year in looking at our investment strategies and how we can do better. And the treasurer is meeting with one of the local banks in an effort to try to see how we can restructure that portfolio to do better.
Glad to hear that.
Further discussion, back of the room, Mr. Hicks.
Munson Hicks. I just want to point out that while we were talking about, oh my gosh, we've lost all this money, those things in brackets, those are paper losses. We haven't spent any of, we haven't relied on the money that isn't there. So it's for accounting purposes, it shows a loss. We wait 3 years, 5 years, whoever knows, those will disappear. So be careful not to look at those as real losses. They are just accounting arrangements.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Article 15 as amended? Mr. Pond, how many times have you spoken on this?
Oh, I've said nothing yet.
Well, I'll give you one more.
Then I'll be brief. I'll be brief, because I don't know. I knew that George Pond's my name.
Thank you.
And I knew that we had money that we had put into investments to try and better ourselves along the way. Some of you folks were not there on the select board, a couple of you were. My question is, because I don't know, are we better off to be invested in a bank, or are we better off to be invested in some place like Edward Jones or an investor company instead of a bank?
The select board and/or the treasurer are interrogated.
Actually, we are invested in various funds through an investment advisor, not through the bank. We are looking at the bank for guidance because we've had a couple of rough years, and we're looking for people to look at our portfolio, give us recommendations, not necessarily invest with the bank, but we're looking for other expert advice to help us look at our portfolio and how we could be doing it different through the market, through Edward Jones, through, pick a fund. But we certainly have things with the agricultural bonds that we have, so it's not all banks. It's just banks. We're going to the bank to get some technical assistance.
One more question.
I'll allow you a follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Pond.
So, if you're going to the bank for investment advice, so to say is the way I take that statement, what are we paying the people that we've invested our money in to do? Are they just there to take our money and put it in investments and not know where to go? So we have to now go to the outside world to get advice to go back to the investment company and tell them what to do? What are they being paid for?
Mr. Root.
We're just getting a second set of eyes to look at it. Does that hurt anything? It always looks good to have his mother with her eyes look at something.
Further discussion on Article 15 as amended. Seeing none, one more we'll go for you. Who are you pointing at? I can't see over there. Up at the top, or who? See, you're behind the camera, Heather. I can't see you. Ms. Ross, please come to the microphone.
I would like to call a question.
It's been moved and seconded that we cease debate. Takes the 2/3. All those in favor of ceasing debate, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've ceased debate. Again, the motion, which has been amended, is that the voters appropriate $201,021 for the funding of items approved in the capital plan, of which $167,897.55 is to be raised by taxes. All those in favor of Article 15, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 15. Article 16, and bear with me on this one because it's a mouthful. Shall the voters appropriate the sum of $14,436.44 to be raised by taxes for the Windham Solid Waste District assessment, to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Solid Waste Fund. As a member of the Windham Solid Waste Management District, the town is assessed an annual fee, which in FY23 will be $6,875.58 from July 1st of 23 to December 31st of 23, and FY24 from January 1st to June 30th of 24. The cost has increased 10% in 2024. The town is obligated to pay the annual assessment unless it officially withdraws from the Waste District, which will take 2 years in accordance with its charter with the state of Vermont. Due to significant state mandates, particularly providing 2 household hazardous waste collection events per year, most towns decide to remain members of the district rather than provide the mandated services on their own. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
Go ahead.
I move that the voters appropriate $14,436.44 for the Windham Solid Waste District assessment to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Solid Waste Fund.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded, the voters appropriate $14,436.44 for the Windham Solid Waste District assessment to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Solid Waste Fund. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none. All those in favor of the article as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 16. Article 17, shall the voters appropriate $103,864.20 to fund curbside recycling and municipal building refuse collection to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Solid Waste Fund. The estimated annual cost will be $95,975 for curbside recycling and $7,889.20 for municipal building refuse collection. Do we have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Root.
I move that the voters appropriate $103,864.20 for curbside recycling municipal refuse collection.
Second.
Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate $103,864.20 for curbside recycling and municipal refuse collection. Discussion on the motion. Please come down to the front. I believe that's Mr. Taft. Yep. See, it's good that I see everybody coming into the clerk's office.
Brendan Taft, just a question. I'm curious if any thought has been given about coming into compliance with state mandates on composting and how we might reconfigure to make that possible.
The Selectboard has been queried on the composting question. Mr. Root? Anybody? All right.
We don't have a solid waste group anymore. Nobody wants to be on it, so if you'd like to, let us know.
Further discussion on Article 17, Mr. Parker.
I'm going to ask a question that a lot of people in town will probably agree with me on. I purchased bags just recently, and I'm getting a lot of complaints hearing on Facebook and things of that nature These bags are crap. Pardon my French, but you can't even pull the top strings without the bags falling apart, the strings coming out. I don't know where we get them from, but whoever we're getting them from, we need to junk them and get some better ones. If we're gonna spend $103,000 for curbside pickup and things of that nature, and we have to pay for the bags on top of this, we need to get better quality product for our money.
Ms. Carr, please.
This is just a,
Hold on, point of order, please come to the microphone because we can't hear you. Ms. Frost.
Heather Frost. We are looking at curbside recycling, not trash, correct?
correct.
So this does not have bags and recycling are separate.
So this really is not dealing with trash except for municipal pickup at the municipal offices and then curbside recycling. So pay-as-you-throw is not a part of this motion. So, Mr. Parker, I'd have to call your comment out of order. Okay? Would you wish to continue, sir?
So am I to understand we're paying $103,864.20 just for curbside recycling?
That is correct.
And municipal trash.
Now, municipal trash is the town office, also the fire department, the library,
The rec department.
the rec department. I don't think that's extremely expensive for what we're getting.
Schools.
Yeah, but still,
That's not a lot. per
that's
ton.
not a lot?
Not when you figure the cost of $160 or $170 a ton.
I don't know.
You cannot offer the curbside trash pickup without the recycling by state law.
All right, any further discussion on Article 17, Ms. Woolwich, and then Mr. Pond?
Okay, I would like a definition of refuse, the word refuse. What do we mean by that?
Municipal solid waste.
Please try to speak louder, everybody. They can't hear you in the back of the room. If they can't hear you in the back of the room, they can't hear you on the playback on BCTV. So please, speak up.
Yeah, it's generally considered municipal solid waste. Public rubbish. I mean, there's also, we have other mandates by the state, but it's basically the refuse that is being picked up, not the recycling, is general office trash that you would.
Yeah, what about our trash? What about the green bags? Where does that qualify in this? Sorry.
So I guess you could say instead of the town buying its own trash bags to get rid of the trash in the town buildings, this is what it's costing instead.
It's a commercial account.
But what about the rest of us? The green bags, if we're paying for the bags, how much do we spend a year for that to get picked up?
So this question, as we said, is really on recycling.
But that's just it, recycling in town waste.
Yes.
What about the rest of us? Where is that?
Please use the microphone, Mr. Parker.
I'm sorry.
They cannot hear you.
Okay.
I don't mind sharing.
Okay. Mark Parker again. If we're paying this
You're
much...
not even speaking in the microphone.
I'm sorry. With my voice, I'm surprised I need it. But if we're paying $103,000 just in recycling, the rest of the trash that we're picking up with the green bags, where are we paying for that? And how much is that if it's not here in the budget?
So that is the price you pay for your bags is supposed to pay what it costs to have the trash pickup. That's the point of the price of the bags.
And Mrs. Turnley
And
may
so
have...
it's not in the budget, because you're supposed to be paying with your trash bags.
Mrs. Turnley may have some answers. Yeah.
Cindy Turnley, Town Treasurer. The trash bags that you're talking about is not part of solid waste. It's pay-as-you-throw fund. It's a separate fund, so you're not going to see it in there. And this article is specifically about the solid waste fund. It has nothing to do with the pay-as-you-throw fund. So what it's talking about is curbside recycling for the whole town, plus municipal trash pickup. It has nothing to do with the pay-as-you-throw program.
Mr. Root.
So the state of Vermont, in their good wisdom, made it so town tax money cannot pay for personal trash. To continue the trash, you do the pay-as-you-throw program. But when you do that, you have to do the recycling with it. You can't do one or the other.
Ms. Woolwich, you make...
My question was, please define the word refuse.
Trash.
Because I think there's a lot of fogginess here. Nobody's quite sure what it is. But there are two things that the homeowner has to be concerned with. We put out our recycling and we put out our trash. We don't put out our food scraps or anything else, or cardboard, but that's another element of recycling. So can we please be consistent in the terms that we use so that everybody is agreed on what they mean? Trash goes in the green bag. It goes to the landfill because trash, it can't be recycled, it can't be composted. We don't know what else to do with it, so it's trash. It's not refuge, it's not, I mean, if you start calling refuse, garbage, whatever other words we use for the stuff we throw away, I think you need, at least in the town report, you need to be consistent in the terms that you use. So it's either trash or recycling.
So in the town office building, as in the other areas, we are recycling, and so anything that would not go into recycling would be the refuse.
Trash.
Municipal side.
Okay.
Please ask your questions and answer them to the chair, if you would, please.
Pardon?
Please ask your questions and answer them to the chair. So ask me the question, we'll get their attention to respond. As opposed to having a debate between the two of you, which is not the portion, which is not what town meeting is for.
Okay. Okay, so the municipal waste that gets picked up, is that separated? Or is it just picked up all in a bunch? Is it separated into trash, into green bags, and then recycling?
We have an answer for you if you'd like us to answer that. Ms. Carr.
We have recycling bins like everybody else. We have recycling bins at the town, like for example, at the town office building. And we do not buy our own trash bags. Though the town trash gets picked up in other regular trash bags.
Does it go to the landfill?
I suppose so. You know, it's picked up as trash.
Okay. The trash is the most expensive bunch of stuff that we throw out. The tipping fees are going up and up and up. And that's why the pay-as-you-throw system was set up, because if people have to pay for it directly by the absolute amount of trash that they send to the landfill, they're going to think twice about how many of those green bags they use. And they're going to be more careful about throwing recycling into recycling. It's supposed to save money.
We have a motion, actually,
Okay.
if you have finished speaking, there is a motion and seconded to cease debate.
I will do that right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Peace. It's been moved and seconded that we cease debate. All those in favor of ceasing debate, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've ceased debate. The recurring question is that the voters appropriate $103,864.20 for curbside recycling and municipal refuse collection. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 17. Article 18, shall voters appropriate the sum of $15,000 to be raised by taxes for the operation of the Emergency Management Office. Mr. Dunphy.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters appropriate the sum of $15,000 to be raised by taxes for the operation of the Emergency Management Office.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded, the voters appropriate the sum of $15,000 to be raised by taxes for the operation of the Emergency Management Office. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor of the article as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 18. Article 19. Shall the voters appropriate the sum of $3,250 to help support the home health, maternal and child health and hospice care provided in patients' homes and in community settings by the Visiting Nurse and Hospice for Vermont and New Hampshire? Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Dunphy.
Shall the voters appropriate the sum of $3,250 to be raised by taxes to support the Visiting Nurse and Hospice of Vermont and New Hampshire?
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate a sum of $3,250 to be raised by taxes to support the Visiting Nurse and Hospice of Vermont and New Hampshire. Discussion on the motion. Mr. Turnley.
May I speak from here, Mr. Moderator?
I cannot hear you. It's kind of hard to hear you if you don't have a microphone.
May I speak from here, Mr. Moderator?
I can barely hear you now.
To know if he can speak from his chair.
Yes, you can speak from your chair.
Kevin Turnley. I spoke to this last year and I feel compelled to speak to it again. The visiting nurses have done a lot for me, and when I was laid up, they would do the sterile dressing changes on my leg. They would also do the sterile dressing on the IV line that I had. And they also taught Cindy how to do the intravenous antibiotics. The reason for my appreciation for this is it saved me from having to get loaded up in a car and be driven up to Brattleboro Hospital each time I needed these treatments done. And I think it's important when we're talking about neighbors helping neighbors and things like that. Nobody knows when something like this is going to come up. Nobody knows if you're going to get sick over a long period of time. Nobody knows if they're going to wind up in an accident that's going to lay them up for a period of time. But I can tell you the 2 to 4 trips up to the hospital each week that this saved me was a great benefit to me. I didn't have to get loaded up in the car, and I had a chance to rest and recuperate. Visiting nurses, bless them all, they did a wonderful job.
Further discussion on Article number 19. Over the corner. Ms. Jobin is recognized when she gets to the microphone.
Faith Jobin. I hear Kevin's plight.
visiting nurses came from my mom, but I don't feel it should come out of my tax dollars. That's it.
Further discussion on Article 19? Over in the corner. Is there a second? Moving and seconded, we cease debate. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. We've ceased debate. The question is whether the voters will appropriate the sum of $3,250 to be raised by taxes to support the Visiting Nurse and Hospice of Vermont and New Hampshire. All those in favor of the article, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 19. Article 20. Shall the town appropriate the sum of $1,850 to help support outpatient mental health and substance abuse services by the staff of Health Care Rehabilitation Services in accordance with 24 V.S.A. subsection 2691. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters appropriate the sum of $1,850 to be raised by taxes to support outpatient mental health and substance abuse services provided by the HCRS.
Is there a second? Motion is that the voters appropriate a sum of $1,850 to be raised by taxes to support outpatient mental health and substance abuse services provided by HCRS. Discussion on the motion. Ms. Jobin.
Faith Jobin, yet again, I don't feel my tax dollars should be used for something I should be able to donate on my own. Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the motion is that the voters appropriate the sum of $1,850 to be raised by taxes to support outpatient mental health and substance abuse services provided by HCRS. Those in favor of Article 20, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have passed Article 20. Article 21, shall the voters authorize payment of real and personal property taxes to the town treasurer in 3 installments, with the due dates being September 14th, 2023, January 11th, 2024, and May 2nd of 2024. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Dunkley.
I move that the voters authorize payment of real and personal property taxes to the town treasurer in 3 installments, with due dates being September 14th, 2023, January 11th, 2024, and May 2nd, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that the voters authorize payment of real and personal property taxes to the town treasurer in 3 installments, with due dates being September 14th, 2023, January 11th, 2024, and May 2nd, 2024. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor of the article as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 21. Article 22, shall the voters approve the provision of notice of availability of the town report and auditor's report by postcard mailed to all registered voters at least 30 days prior to town meeting, in lieu of mailing or otherwise distributing the town report and auditor's report as authorized by Vermont law and 24 V.S.A. subsection 1682A2. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Go ahead, Mr. Duncan.
As this is the last motion, I'll have to move in my career up front. I'll try not to screw it up and fall down at the finish line. I move that the voters approve the provision of notice of availability of the town report and auditor's report by postcard mail to all registered voters at least 30 days prior to town meeting, in lieu of mailing or otherwise distributing the town report and auditor's report as authorized by Vermont law and 24 V.S.A. section 1682A2.
Is there a Nicely done, Jack. Is there a second to that motion? Moved and seconded, the voters approve the provision of notice of availability of the town report and auditor's report by postcard mailed to all registered voters at least 30 days prior to town meeting in lieu of mailing or otherwise distributing the town report and auditor's report as authorized by Vermont law and 24 V.S.A. section 1682A2. Discussion on the motion. Please. Oh, thank you. Who seconded that?
Sandra.
Sandra did second. So if you wish to speak to the motion, come forward. And state your name, please.
You said state my name?
Please.
I'm David Baldwin. I disagree with this per se because we're getting in the way of being transparent. We don't know what's going on with the select board very much. All this stuff wasn't explained very well, and everybody's complaining about it, but nobody's really doing anything. For instance, the capital plan. What do you plan to do this next year? I don't know. Or how about,
Recycle.
emergency services plan? What happened last year? What are we going to do this next year? I mean, we could stand up here and argue about it day in and day out, but we need more information out of what happened in the past, what you want to do. That will offset a lot of complaining. So think about it.
Further discussion on the article. Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 22 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have passed Article 22. Article 23, to transact any other business that may lawfully come before said meeting, and we cannot take any binding action under Article 23. Mr. Parker.
Mark Parker again. As we've all been here tonight and seen and heard what little we did here, I would like to ask maybe the select board to investigate the possibility of upgrading the sound system, getting more speakers, and they can be placed in the back so that the whole group can hear everything that's going on tonight, and not just one microphone, but like the microphones the select board were using, they worked intermittently. Sometimes they weren't turned on, maybe ones that stay on so nobody can mess with them. But just more speakers and maybe a better sound system, and that's something that can be looked at this year. It's nothing that we need to do tonight, but something to think about.
Thank you. Ms. Brzezinski, if you'd like to come down and elucidate.
Anna Rosinski. I would just like to encourage everyone. There seems to be a lot of questions about the town report, myself included, and it's my own stupidity for not stopping earlier and taking the time to review the report at length. Before I came tonight, I reviewed bits and pieces. To that point, being a school board member, and I can appreciate the perspective of the select board as well, we have meetings that are every month, and the select board meets twice a month. And so I know that both of those meetings can be attended when things come up, but I would encourage everyone, if you have questions about spending or you have questions about specifics, that none of those boards on the fly can always answer those questions. And I would encourage you from this moment on to jot down the things that are in your brain tonight that you want to follow up on and attend those meetings so they're more constructive conversations. I will speak as a board member to say we come tonight with very specific things in mind and we don't have all of our notes with us, and I'm sure the select board feels the same way. So rather than just sit idly by until town meeting every year, I would encourage you to attend the meetings and be a little bit more informed as far as the process and inner workings of both boards ahead of time. To that point, additionally, and I'll finish, I promise, I think it's really important that everyone recognizes the time that goes into getting ready for the meeting, and that those conversations about spending can also happen before and while the budgets are being created. So please think about that.
Chair recognizes Ms. Thomas.
Eleanor Thomas. First, I want to thank the Select Board for the hard work that you guys do. It can be a thankless job, but I really appreciate what you do. I just have maybe a couple comments. I don't know if maybe I missed it, but perhaps an informational meeting on your budget prior to town meeting, similar to what the school board does, would be helpful, because I know as I was going through the town report, and I did read it really carefully, I had questions. But, and I guess I could have emailed them to you, but I think if we had a session, it would be helpful to everybody. And then the other comment I wanted to make is, I haven't experienced this before, but I was a little concerned that the warning that we all got, the yellow paper, was different than some of the articles that were read tonight. So I think that led to a little bit of confusion for people. And also, I think there was the emergency fund that got left out of the town report. So maybe, you know, we make mistakes, but maybe a little bit more careful reading of those documents before they go out. Thanks.
I just want to say our budget sessions are publicly warranted every year.
Thank you. Chair would recognize Mr. Brzezinski.
I just want to, Don Brzezinski, I just want to put in a plug, and I've tested the goodies on the table. They are all good. I highly urge you guys to grab something on the way out. The kids are doing their best to raise funds for a trip, I believe.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Mrs. Harris.
This is from Mark Parker. On page 9 is the pay-as-you-throw fund. It'll show you what's come in and what's gone out.
Any further discussion under other business? Yes, Mrs. Morrison.
I just wondered if you could give us an update on the ARPA funds. What, is there any,
Time for an ARPA update.
you can explain to us?
Mrs. Canton.
Okay, so we have expended some of the funds. Recently, we had given some money to the fire department. We've recently given money to the fire department for gear, for computers, and some other training apparatus. We have also given $80,000 to the Friends of Vernon Center for the Governor Hunt House. And $50,000 has gone to the fire department for new radios so that we can communicate with other towns effectively. I know that we spent $1,000 on an owl. That was our first purchase, so that we could have meetings where the sound is picked up and it's a bit more clear, not only for the select board, but for other boards as well.
Just briefly and additionally, pursuant to what happened at last year's town meeting, we said that we would hold a public session on the use of ARPA funds. We did hold that public hearing, if you will, public meeting, took guidance from the citizens who brought up projects or perhaps expenditures that could be made out of the ARPA money. The select board, I think, and I don't want to speak for them, but I think the process, other than using some of that money for the fire and the things that Shelley just talked about, we're going to sit down at some point over the next several months, look at all of the things that have been requested, look at the balance, probably have another public meeting on where we plan to spend that money and what our plans are, and to get some more, to get some additional input from the citizens here in town. So we haven't spent it all. We certainly have spent it on some things that, one-time expenditures, so it's not an ongoing thing that we have to pick up later. And I know the board will have more, look for more input and put their priorities in order before a big chunk of that money is spent, so everybody knows what's going on.
Chair recognizes Mr. Langveld.
Just quickly, speaking of public meetings, the town, or the Recreation Department, is engaged in the process of developing an outdoor recreation master plan to look at all the outdoor recreation in the town and figure out where some of that ARPA money might be spent on outdoor recreational facility improvements. And very soon they are going to have a public meeting here at the school to invite the whole town to come and give their input on things they might like to see, everything from trails to bike things to river access to improvements at the rec center, et cetera. So look for notice on that and be there.
Any further discussion under other business? If not, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. I declare the Vernon Town meeting to be adjourned. Thank you and have a good night.